My life had imploded. One moment, I was just Clara, a slightly overwhelmed but otherwise ordinary young woman trying to make ends meet in the city. The next, I was Clara, deeply in debt thanks to an ex-boyfriend who'd vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of illicit loans in my name. The men who came to collect weren't exactly understanding. They weren't just demanding money. They were delivering threats. Real threats. I had 2 weeks to come up with $80,000, or I'd find myself in a situation far worse than bankruptcy. I was desperate. Truly, profoundly desperate. I spent my days combing through online job boards, my nights staring at the ceiling, the chilling echo of a broken window from their last visit still ringing in my ears. No job was too menial, no task too daunting. I just needed money. Fast. That's when I saw the ad. It was buried deep in a niche section, under specialized household services, which was odd. It didn't look like any other advertisement. It was simple, stark, almost cryptic. Seeking, individual for discreet long-term household management. Unconventional residence, remote location, compensation, substantial, immediate, requirements, absolute discretion, availability, no personal attachments. Inquire directly at Valthorian Estate. Serious applicants only. Substantial, immediate compensation, no personal attachments. The words glowed on the screen like a beacon in my suffocating darkness. My heart pounded. It sounded too good to be true, of course. Everything about it screamed, danger. But what did I have to lose? My life was already on the line. I should have known something was wrong when the address led me far outside the city, onto a winding, unpaved road shrouded by ancient, skeletal trees. The GPS signal vanished about halfway, leaving me to navigate by instinct and the sheer, intimidating presence of the landscape. The Valthorian estate wasn't just remote, it was isolated. It wasn't just a house, it was a castle. A colossal Gothic behemoth that seemed to claw its way out of the earth, its stone walls scarred by centuries of weather and neglect. Turrets pierced the perpetually overcast sky, and stained glass windows, dark as blood in the fading light, stared out like unblinking eyes. I parked my battered sedan at the end of the long, crumbling driveway, my hands clammy on the steering wheel. A sense of unease settled over me, heavy and cold. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn back, but the thought of those men, of my debt, pushed me forward. I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life, or the best decision. I walked up to the massive oak doors, carved with grotesque, forgotten creatures. There was no doorbell, no knocker. I hesitated, then pushed. To my surprise, the door swung inward silently, revealing a cavernous hall bathed in shadows. A chill permeated the air, an ancient, dusty cold that seeped into my bones. "Hello." My voice was a timid whisper, swallowed by the vastness. "I'm Clara. I'm here about the advertisement." My words hung in the air, unanswered, until a voice, deep and resonant, echoed from the darkness at the far end of the hall. It was like rich velvet, or the hum of a distant cello. "Come in, Clara. I've been expecting you." I froze. How did he know my name? I hadn't given it in any correspondence. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against the oppressive silence. But I had come too far. I stepped inside, the heavy door sighing shut behind me, plunging me into a deeper, unsettling gloom. He emerged from the shadows, and my breath caught in my throat. He wasn't old and stooped as I'd half expected. He was strikingly, unnervingly handsome. Tall, with broad shoulders and a lean, powerful frame. His hair was the color of midnight, falling in soft waves to his collar, framing a face sculpted from marble. High cheekbones, a strong jawline, and lips that seemed carved for temptation. But it was his eyes that truly held me captive. They were a startling shade of silver gray, ancient and penetrating, as if they held the wisdom and weariness of 1,000 lifetimes. They seemed to see right through me, into the very core of my desperation. He was impeccably dressed in a dark, tailored suit that seemed to absorb the scant light. Dorian Valthorian, he introduced himself, his voice maintaining that captivating timbre. He offered no hand to shake. He simply stood there, observing me, making me feel simultaneously exposed and utterly insignificant. "Clara," I managed, my voice still trembling slightly. "Clara Hayes." "Yes, I know." He walked slowly towards me, each step unnervingly silent on the stone floor. "You responded to my advertisement. Discreet long-term household management." He stopped a few feet from me, his presence dominating the space. He smelled faintly of old books, cold stone, and something else. Something indescribably ancient and dangerous, like a forgotten spice. "Right. The cleaning job." My voice still sounded small and reedy. He tilted his head slightly, a faint, almost imperceptible curve playing on his lips. It wasn't a smile, not exactly. It was more like a fleeting acknowledgement of a private joke. "Cleaning, yes, and management. But cleaning is merely a euphemism, Miss Hayes. What I require is far more comprehensive and far more binding." My gut instinct screamed at me to run, but my bank account screamed louder. "Binding? What exactly does that mean?" He gestured towards a heavy, ornate door to our left. "Perhaps we should discuss the terms in my study." The study was even darker, lined floor to ceiling with bookshelves packed with leather-bound tomes. A roaring fire in a massive hearth provided the only warmth, casting flickering shadows that danced across the room like ghosts. He indicated a plush velvet armchair, then settled himself behind a massive, dark wood desk. On the desk, a thick, leather-bound document lay open. My eyes immediately went to the bottom line, a figure that made my jaw drop. It was more than enough to cover my debt, with a comfortable sum left over. A substantial sum, indeed. "This is an incredible amount of money," I stammered, pointing at the document. "It reflects the unusual nature of the position," Dorian replied, his gaze unwavering, "and the level of discretion required. The household management, as you so quaintly put it, involves a certain public face." He paused, leaning forward slightly. "I require a wife, Miss Hayes, a temporary wife, for 1 year." My head spun. A wife. This was even crazier than I'd imagined. A wife? Why? And why me? "My family," he began, his tone betraying a hint of weariness. "They are traditional, archaic, some might say. They demand that I marry by my 850th year, or I forfeit my position, my inheritance, and my standing within our Murik community. The deadline is fast approaching." I laughed. A short, nervous bark. "Your 850th year? Sir? With all due respect, are you a vampire?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. The air in the room seemed to crackle. Dorian's silver eyes narrowed, and the faint curve on his lips vanished, replaced by an expression of intense scrutiny. The silence stretched, long and suffocating, until I thought I might suffocate. Then, he leaned back, a slow, deliberate movement. "Precisely, Miss Hayes. I am a vampire." My breath hitched. My heart felt like a trapped bird beating against my ribs, desperate to escape. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the fantastical with the terrifying reality sitting before me. Vampires weren't real. They were creatures of myth, of novels, of B-movies. But the chill in the room, the ancient scent, the unnatural pallor of his skin, the unsettling intensity of his gaze, it all coalesced into a horrifying truth. "But that's impossible," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Is it?" he challenged softly. Your reality is collapsing around you, Miss Hayes. You are desperately in need of funds. You are utterly alone, with no attachments, and I am in desperate need of a temporary bride. A human bride, specifically, as my family has certain expectations about procreation, even if it is merely for show in this instance. Your circumstances make you ideal. So, you found me through some dark magic, I suppose. I tried to inject some sarcasm into my voice, but it came out as a shaky squeak. He almost smiled again. Let's just say I have excellent resources for identifying those in need of mutually beneficial arrangements. You were an easy mark, Clara. He said my name again, and this time it sounded less like a discovery and more like a possessive claim. The agreement is simple. 1 year, you live here, at Valthorian Estate, as my wife. You will accompany me to social functions. You will act the part, convincingly. In return, the substantial sum you see here will be transferred to your account immediately upon signing. And any outstanding debts you may have will be handled. No questions asked. My mind flashed to the men who wanted my blood. He knew. He knew about my debt, about the danger I was in. This wasn't just a bizarre job offer. It was a lifeline, offered by a literal monster. And if I refuse? My voice was barely a tremor. Then I wish you good luck with your personal financial challenges, he said, his eyes devoid of emotion. My offer is non-negotiable and time-sensitive. I looked at the contract again. The clauses, the terms, the $500,000, the promise of protection. I looked at Dorian, sitting so calmly behind his desk, a creature from the darkest of nightmares offering me salvation. What happened next still haunts me. I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life, or the best decision. I took a deep breath, the scent of ancient dust and something cold and predatory filling my lungs. My hand was shaking as I picked up the pen. Fine, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll do it. I'll be your wife. For 1 year. His faint, unsettling smile returned. Excellent. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Valthorian. The money hit my account that same day. My debts were miraculously cleared. The men who'd been hunting me simply vanished. It was unsettling how efficiently Dorian Valthorian could manipulate the mortal world. My life, which had been a tangled mess of fear and despair, was now neatly organized, clean, and terrifyingly unreal. I moved into Valthorian Estate officially the next week. It was less a move and more an absorption. My meager belongings were dwarfed by the sheer opulence of the place. Dorian assigned me a lavish suite in the West Wing, far from his own quarters, which, I soon discovered, were deep in the castle's ancient foundations. On my first night, after a silent dinner where he merely observed me pick at my food, he laid out the rules. We were in the study again, the fire crackling, shadows dancing. As we discussed, Clara, he began, his voice devoid of any warmth. This is a business arrangement, a performance. We will present a united front to the world, particularly to my family. In public, we are devoted, we are affectionate, we are a perfectly matched couple. He paused, his eyes piercing mine. In private, we maintain distance. You are free to move about the castle, with some exceptions. My personal chambers are off limits. The East Wing is mostly disused and should be avoided, and under no circumstances are you to enter the 7th tower. Do you understand? I nodded, feeling a knot of unease tighten in my stomach. The 7th tower. I hadn't even noticed it. And no questions about what you do at night. Precisely, he affirmed. My nocturnal activities are not your concern. Your role is to appear by my side when required, and to maintain the illusion of our marriage. Nothing more, nothing less. Right. No emotional involvement. This is strictly business, I repeated, trying to sound confident. But even then, Something about the way he looked at me made me doubt my own words. He inclined his head slightly. Precisely. We have an agreement, and I expect you to honor it. The early days were a strange ballet of awkward encounters and unsettling observations. Dorian was, in many ways, an enigma. He rarely appeared during the day, and when he did, it was always in the deepest shadows of the castle, avoiding direct sunlight. He ate nothing, only sipped at a dark red liquid he called vintage wine. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. I explored the castle in the daytime, when he was presumably resting in his subterranean chambers. It was a labyrinth of echoing halls, forgotten libraries, and vast, empty ballrooms. Dust motes danced in the sparse sunlight that managed to pierce the thick, velvet drapes. I often found myself drawn to the forbidden areas, my curiosity a dangerous companion. The east wing was indeed derelict, covered in shrouds, smelling of decay. But the seventh tower, its entrance was sealed by an immense iron-bound door, humming with a low, almost imperceptible vibration. A shiver always ran down my spine when I neared it. I never dared to touch it, let alone try to open it. My life already depended on this man. I wasn't about to provoke him. Our public debut as a couple came sooner than I expected. It was a gala hosted by one of Dorian's ancient relatives, a formidable matriarch named Lady Valthorian. She was a creature of ice and elegance, with eyes that seemed to possess the weight of centuries. The other guests were equally intimidating, impossibly pale, exquisitely dressed, and moving with a silent grace that was unnerving. They were all like him, I realized with a jolt. Vampires. An entire world hidden from mortal eyes. Dorian's hand at the small of my back, guiding me through the throng, felt both possessive and reassuring. "Remember our agreement, Clara," he murmured, his voice a low thrum against my ear. "Act the part. Be enchanting. Be devoted." I smiled up at him, a practiced, saccharine smile that felt alien on my face. "As if my life depended on it, darling," I whispered back, my voice dripping with false affection. And it did. My life truly did. Lady Valthorian greeted us with a chillingly polite smile. "Dorian, my dear boy, so you finally found yourself a bride, and a human, no less. How quaint." Her eyes, sharp and judgmental, raked over me, assessing, dissecting. Dorian tightened his grip on my waist, pulling me closer. "Quaint, perhaps, aunt, but entirely mine. Clara has captivated me. I trust you approve." His voice was smooth as silk, but beneath it, I detected a steel edge. I squeezed his arm, playing my part. "It's an honor to meet Dorian's family, Lady Valthorian. He speaks so fondly of you." It was a blatant lie. He'd barely mentioned his family, let alone fondly. Lady Valthorian's smile barely shifted. "Indeed, we shall see, my dear. We shall see." The night was a blur of polite conversation, forced smiles, and the unsettling sensation of being constantly scrutinized. Dorian never left my side. He danced with me, his movements fluid and powerful, holding me closer than necessary. He held my hand, intertwined our fingers, and even, at one point, kissed my temple in a public display of affection that sent a strange warmth through me. It was all for show, I reminded myself. All for the sake of his inheritance. But something in the way he looked at me, in the subtle pressure of his hand, felt real. And that was a dangerous thought. As the weeks turned into months, the lines of our agreement began to blur. We maintained our distance in the castle's vastness, but the silent understanding between us deepened. We often found ourselves in the library late at night, him reading ancient texts, me engrossed in a forgotten novel. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, companionable. One evening, I was watching a storm rage outside the tall windows of the grand living room. mesmerized by the lightning that briefly illuminated the dark landscape. Dorian entered, moving with his usual silent grace. He stood beside me, his presence a comforting warmth against the chill of the storm. "Beautiful, isn't it?" I murmured, watching a streak of lightning ignite the sky. "Potent," he corrected, his voice a low rumble. "Nature's raw power, something mortals rarely appreciate. And you do." I turned to him. He met my gaze, his silver eyes reflecting the distant flashes. "I have seen countless storms, Clara, each one a unique display of untamed energy. They remind me of the fleeting nature of all things, and the enduring power of some." His eyes lingered on mine, and for a moment, I felt a connection that transcended our bizarre contract. It was a shared moment of wonder, of quiet understanding, but nothing could prepare me for what I was about to discover. Then there were the moments of accidental intimacy. One particularly cold night, I'd fallen asleep on a plush sofa in the library, a heavy book tented over my face. I woke to a sensation of warmth, a soft blanket draped over me, and Dorian's presence, still and watchful, in a nearby armchair. Our eyes met, and he merely nodded, a gesture of silent care that unexpectedly touched my heart. Another time, at a social gathering, an arrogant, overly charming vampire had cornered me, attempting to flirt despite my obvious discomfort. Dorian appeared out of nowhere, his face a mask of controlled fury. He didn't say a word. He simply took my arm, pulled me into a dance, and held me so close I could feel the cold, hard planes of his chest against mine. His eyes, usually so impassive, burned with a possessive fire. "He is entirely too familiar, darling," he murmured, his breath a cool caress against my ear. His voice was laced with a dark, primal jealousy that was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. "He means nothing," I whispered back, my own heart pounding. "He means to stake a claim," Dorian growled, tightening his grip. "A claim that is already taken." He then proceeded to kiss me. Not a chaste, public peck, but a deep, lingering kiss that stole my breath and sent shivers through my entire body. It was a declaration, a warning to the other vampire, but it felt intensely, undeniably real to me. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were still burning, and his lips were faintly bruised, mirroring the ache in mine. The fake kiss had felt more real than any kiss I'd ever experienced. Little did I know, he was watching me the whole time, and these moments were not as accidental as I thought. Our interactions in the castle became less formal, more comfortable. We'd debate ancient philosophies, discuss strategies for chess, or simply share silences that felt profound. He started seeking me out, not just for public appearances, but for his own strange form of companionship. I found myself looking forward to his nocturnal presence, drawn to his quiet strength and unexpected depth. One night, I found him in the dimly lit art gallery, staring at a portrait of a woman with long, dark hair and sorrowful eyes. He looked distant, lost in a memory. "She's beautiful," I said softly, approaching him. He didn't startle. "Her name was Alara," he said, his voice unusually raw. "My first love, long ago." A pang of something akin to jealousy, sharp and unexpected, twisted in my gut. What happened to her? He turned from the portrait, his silver eyes clouded with a profound sadness. "She died, as all mortals do. I watched her fade, year by year, while I remained unchanged. It is the curse of my existence, Clara. To love is to condemn oneself to eternal grief." His vulnerability disarmed me. For the first time, I saw not the ancient monster or the demanding lord, but a deeply lonely being burdened by immortality. I reached out, my hand hovering near his arm. The rules dictated no touching without permission. But his sorrow was palpable, echoing in the vast, empty halls of his being. I slowly, hesitantly, placed my hand on his forearm. His skin was cool to the touch, like polished marble, but he didn't pull away. He simply closed his eyes, leaning into my touch, a silent acknowledgement of comfort given and received. "It must be incredibly lonely," I whispered, my voice thick with empathy. He opened his eyes, and they were filled with an emotion so potent it made my own eyes sting. It was, "Until you." His words hung in the air, a fragile, unspoken confession that shook the foundations of our business arrangement. The contract was nearing its end. Only a few weeks remained of our year-long charade. The deadline for Dorian's inheritance was fast approaching, and soon I would have fulfilled my part of the bargain. I would walk away with more money than I could ever have dreamed of, free from debt, free from danger, and free from Dorian Valthorian. The thought should have brought immense relief. Instead, it brought a crushing sense of dread. I found myself increasingly agitated, snapping at the castle staff, pacing the floors of my luxurious but increasingly lonely suite. I knew I was in deep trouble. I was falling in love with a vampire, with my fake husband, a creature from a world I didn't belong in, bound by rules and ancient laws I couldn't comprehend. The truth was far more dangerous than I imagined. One evening, after another, particularly convincing performance at a vampire council meeting, where we had to argue passionately about a trivial matter, holding hands and gazing into each other's eyes, I couldn't keep the charade going any longer. We were back in the castle, walking through the dimly lit corridors towards our separate wings. The silence between us felt strained, heavy with unspoken words. "I can't do this anymore, Dorian," I blurted out, stopping abruptly. He turned, his silver eyes unreadable in the gloom. "Do what, Clara?" "This." I waved my hand vaguely. "This pretense, this constant acting. 1 minute we're practically declaring undying devotion in front of your terrifying relatives. The next we're strangers in our own home. I can't pretend that I don't feel anything anymore." My voice rose, raw with emotion. He took a step towards me, his expression hardening. "And what exactly do you feel, Clara?" His voice was low, dangerous, an underlying tremor of something I couldn't quite decipher. "I feel confused, angry, and completely, utterly in love with you." The words burst out of me, desperate and unstoppable. My chest heaved, tears stinging my eyes. "There, I said it. Are you happy now?" The human, the fragile little mortal, broke the sacred rule. She got emotionally involved. She fell for the ancient brooding vampire. Isn't that just perfectly cliché? He was utterly still, his eyes boring into mine, searching, analyzing. "Clara." His voice was a whisper, laced with shock. "No." I cut him off, my voice cracking. "Don't you dare tell me this is a mistake. Don't you dare tell me to be sensible. I know it's insane. I know you're a monster. But every time you touch me, every time you look at me like you actually see me, I forget everything else. I forget the danger, the debt, the fact that you literally drink blood. I want this to be real, Dorian, all of it." A profound silence descended, heavy and suffocating. He stared at me, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Then, slowly, painfully, his own composure cracked. "You think it has been easy for me, Clara?" he asked, his voice rough, hoarse. "You think I haven't struggled with this impossible connection? My rules were for my own protection, as much as yours, to guard against this very thing." He moved swiftly, closing the distance between us, his hands cupping my face, his touch cool but insistent. "You walked into my life, a beacon of light in centuries of darkness, and you shattered every defense I had built, every wall, every caution, every vow never to feel this profound, aching emotion again. His eyes, those ancient silver depths, were now swirling with a tempest of emotion. I am Dorian Valthorian. I am a creature of the night, bound to an existence of eternal shadows. I have watched empires rise and fall, loved and lost more times than you have years on this earth. And every single time, I have endured the agony of watching them fade while I remain. It is a torment I swore I would never inflict upon myself again. He leaned his forehead against mine, his voice a low, desperate plea. But then there was you. You, with your infuriating curiosity, your surprising courage, your utterly captivating spirit. And I fell. Harder than I have in centuries, Clara. I fell for my fake wife. I fell for you. My breath hitched. His words, raw and unfiltered, stripped away the last vestiges of my doubt. His confession was real, tangible, more potent than any spell. So, what now? I whispered, my voice choked with tears. He pulled back slightly, his thumb gently caressing my cheek. Now I am terrified, because I am bound by my nature. And you are mortal. Your life is a precious, fleeting spark compared to my endless night, and I cannot bear the thought of watching that spark extinguish. My gaze locked with his, conviction solidifying in my heart. Then don't, I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. Don't watch it extinguish. Change it. His eyes widened, reflecting the moonlight filtering through a high window. Clara, you don't understand what you're asking. It is a profound, irreversible transformation. A rebirth into darkness. You would lose your place in the sun, your mortal existence. You would become like me. I want to be like you, I asserted, my conviction unwavering. I want to be with you, for as long as you exist, for as long as I exist. What good is a mortal life if it means an eternity without you? My hands came up to grasp his, holding them tightly. I choose you, Dorian, the monster, the man, the ancient, brooding soul who somehow managed to steal my heart. I choose all of you, and I want to stand beside you, in your darkness, if that's what it takes. He searched my eyes, a silent conversation passing between us, deep and profound. Then, a slow, tender smile spread across his face, a genuine, unburdened smile that transformed his ancient features into something breathtakingly beautiful. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly, possessively, as if I were the most precious treasure he had ever possessed. Are you certain, my love? He whispered against my hair, his voice thick with emotion. There is no turning back from this path. I lifted my head, meeting his gaze, my heart soaring with a joy I never thought possible. The only thing I'm certain of, my future husband, is that I want every second of eternity with you. He kissed me then, truly kissed me. It was a kiss of promise, of commitment, of ancient love finally finding its anchor. It was a kiss that sealed not just our fate, but our very existence. The contract, the pretense, the fear of debt and danger. It all vanished, replaced by the thrilling, terrifying, undeniable reality of our love. The transformation was otherworldly. Dorian explained it to me, patiently, lovingly, detailing the process, the risks, the changes I would undergo. It was not without pain, he warned, but he promised to be with me every step of the way. And he was. He performed the ritual in his private chambers, deep within the castle's heart, a place of ancient power and shadowed secrets. His bite was a sharp, intense pain, followed by a rush of sensations, cold, then fire, then an overwhelming sense of dissolution, as if my very essence was unraveling. I felt my heart slow, my breath cease, my mortal life slipping away like sand through an hourglass. Through it all, Dorian was there, holding me, whispering words of comfort and reassurance, his strength a steady anchor in the swirling chaos. When I finally awoke, it was to a world sharpened, intensified. Every scent was richer, every sound clearer, every texture more vibrant. The darkness of the chamber was no longer dim. I could see every detail, every mote of dust dancing in the air. My body felt stronger, faster, alive with a new, potent energy. But the most profound change was the silence of my own heart, the lack of a human pulse. I was no longer mortal. I was reborn. Dorian was watching me, his silver eyes filled with a mixture of awe and profound tenderness. He reached out, his cool hand caressing my cheek. "How do you feel, my love?" he asked, his voice filled with a tremor I'd never heard before. I reached up, my hand meeting his, my touch now as cool as his own. I felt an exhilarating rush of power, a sense of belonging I had never known. "I feel complete," I whispered, marveling at the strength in my own voice, and for the first time, truly alive. He smiled, a full, dazzling smile that made the ancient chambers glow with a warmth that had nothing to do with the flickering candles. "Welcome to eternity, my wife." The next day, we were married again. This time, it wasn't for show. It was a true union, witnessed by the silent portraits of his ancestors and the hushed echoes of the castle. Lady Valthorian and the rest of the Vampire Council were present, of course. Their initial shock at our genuine love had slowly transformed into a grudging respect, even a strange sort of warmth for the human who had managed to melt the heart of the formidable Dorian Valthorian. They understood, in their own ancient way, the power of a true bond, even one formed under such unconventional circumstances. My life, once a desperate scramble for survival, was now an endless expanse of discovery and love. I learned to navigate my new existence, to control my new thirst, to harness my newfound strength. Dorian was an patient, loving teacher, guiding me through the complexities of our shared world. We traveled to places I'd only ever dreamed of, visited ancient ruins he had seen when they were new, and lived through historical events that were mere footnotes in textbooks to mortals. But my favorite moments were the quiet ones, in the castle's library, or under the pale moonlight in the gardens, simply existing together, reading in companionable silence, or talking for hours about everything and nothing. I was no longer Clara, the desperate human. I was Clara Valthorian, the immortal wife of an ancient vampire, his equal in strength and his partner in eternity. I had been hired to clean a castle, a strange, desperate gamble to save my life. But instead, I found something infinitely more precious than money or even freedom. I found a love that defied time, challenged death, and promised an eternity of adventure. I found my Dorian, and with him, I found my true home, the one that beat, not with a mortal pulse, but with the steady, eternal rhythm of shared hearts.